This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Thursday, June 22nd. I thank you so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Coming up today, we'll talk with Paula Scanlan. This is a former University of Pennsylvania swimmer. She was the one on the team with the male pretending to be the female that we're supposed to call Lia Thomas now. She's joined her friend Riley Gaines, or Riley Barker is her married name now. Riley testified before the Senate yesterday. They work together now at the Independent Women's Forum. And a great conversation about younger, as I tell her today in the conversation, I'm pushing 50. So, I want to talk to younger people culturally. Do they think that this is something that is growing in support, this concept of people changing their gender, or does she think this is something that's actually being met with a healthy pushback amongst women her age? So it's a great conversation. And Davie Bossie will also be with us today. I swerve into a conversation with David about I didn't know this until the conversation unfolded, that he's actually running the presidential debates for the Republican side, the Republican candidate debates. Got a lot of interesting insight, unintentionally, today, and so you're going to hear that conversation, as well as Adam Schiff. I'm a man of my word. I told you, those of you that wrote me critically, upset that I was critical of the 20 Republicans who did not sign off on the original censure of Adam Schiff. Well, they did it yesterday. My view, it's toothless, but I promised that I would revisit it and correct the record if they actually pulled it off. They did do it, so we'll get into some of that coming up as well. Want to thank you very much for giving us a 5-star review and a written review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Spotify, you people that listen on Spotify, I'm sorry. I don't really know what the issue is there. I hope we've got it rectified, but I'm told all of my Salem colleagues are having the same issue when publishing their podcasts. Spotify is really intermittent at the moment. Hopefully we've got it rectified. But if there is, episodes that have not published or you're missing, I do one every day. So if for some reason it doesn't show up in your feed, if you're a regular Spotify user, I don't know what's going on there. We're trying to figure it out. Check out iTunes. Check out Podbean. Just go to chrisstigall.com. I mean, there's a trillion different places you can stream podcasts these days, but I always recommend, if nothing else, you can go to my website where it is without fail, chrisstigall.com. John Ruhlman is the guy that makes this show possible every day, and if you are trying to save money and cut costs where you can, your health insurance premiums, if you buy your own health insurance, that's one of the most obvious starts. John is saving people 30 to 60% a month on their health insurance premiums. Not less coverage, less rates. So usmedicalplan.com is the website. Look for my picture on the website or you're not on the right spot. I did a 40-minute conversation with John about the health insurance business, and it's pretty eye-opening. If you want to watch it and get a sense of who he is before you make the call, go ahead. That's why I did it, so you get a sense of who he is and what he does. Go to chrisstigall.com and watch that video conversation with John, or pick up the phone today and say, hey, here's what I pay. Here's the insurance I have. Can you do better? And he will put it up against the 80 different private health insurers that he does business with. And I'll bet you he finds you better coverage at a cheaper rate. And if you're a small business owner and you cover insurance for your employees, I know personally I have a friend who found better coverage for his family and saved $2,000 a month. It still just floors me that I personally know someone that saved $2,000 by making this phone call a month. 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321. If you buy your own health insurance, reach out to John Ruhlman, usmedicalplan.com. Okay, I'm a man of my word. I told you that I would come here on the air if the Republicans end up censuring Adam Schiff and reevaluating my initial criticism of House Republicans failing to do so last week, to the tune of something like 20 of them who wouldn't support it. House Republicans yesterday voted to censure Adam Schiff after all, a rare reprimand of a sitting lawmaker, writes The Hill. The vote was 213, 209 to 6 abstaining. I would assume those 6 are probably Democrats. 213 to 209. I didn't actually see. Were there any Republicans that continued to vote against it? I'm sure there must have been a couple. 20 Republicans that originally said no joined Democrats in supporting a motion last week, as you remember. A number of the GOP defectors took issue with the non-binding whereas clauses in the measure that said if the Ethics Committee found Schiff lied, made misrepresentations, and abused sensitive information, he should be fined $16 million, saying it was unconstitutional. As you remember, that dollar figure, the resolution claimed, was half the amount, the money, American taxpayers paid to fund an investigation into potential Trump-Russia collusion, which never materialized. In an effort to allay those concerns, the Congresswoman Luna from Florida behind the censure movement, she revamped the resolution at the end of last week, nixed the fine language, and made a handful of other revisions. Additionally, the new resolution just calls for censuring Schiff, while the original involved censuring and condemning Schiff. Okay, it's true what I read to you yesterday. The new resolution called, again, I'm just reminding you that I had this yesterday. They had rewritten this thing to not only take out the fine, because that was the problem everybody had with it. You know, the esteemed Thomas Massey, the constitutionalist from Kentucky. My constitutional principles were at stake. Can't support it. Okay, so it was rewritten and the fine was taken out, but also taken out. So I'm just asking you, I told you I'd revisit this. This, in the scope of the news of this week, this really isn't a front burner issue for me, but I promised that I would revisit it. And I heard from enough of you that said, you're not being fair. Those 20 Republicans are being principled. I said, okay, if they vote to censure Schiff, I'll revisit it. So here I am, dealing with this first things first. Are you satisfied with this, Fast Eddie? The report yesterday, as I read it, and I kept it because I knew they were going to vote yesterday, so I kept this report just to remind you. The newly written censure of Schiff omitted non-binding clauses that say Schiff, quote, purposely deceived his committee, Congress, and the American people, and that he exploited his positions on the House Intelligence Committee to encourage and excuse abusive intelligence investigations of Americans for political purposes. The revamped resolution adds a number of non-binding clauses, but it does away with condemning him. It does away with condemning. So it did away with the fine, and additionally, it does away with basically any language that condemns him. So I ask you again, and if the answer is yes, it's yes, we move on, but I'm revisiting it. They did, in fact, vote to censure him yesterday, but given the information that I just shared with you, are you satisfied?
Chris, this is 50-50 for me because I understand the game of politics. I would have preferred they take the $17 million away from him because he's running for Senate, so he's going to fundraise now off of being censured.
Yep.
So this is a 50-50. He should be censured. He's done a lot of egregious things, but he's going to fundraise off of this, and we don't hit him for any money. He's
running against Mrs. Potato Head out there.
That's right.
That Katie Porter woman.
Yeah.
And she seems to be the odds-on favorite. She seems to be sort of the press favorite, for sure. It's going to be interesting, though. Does this help him now?
It gives some political momentum, absolutely.
The next senator from California, Adam Schiff, Senator Schiff. How's that sound?
Oh, gosh.
So I don't know. Look, ultimately, you're talking about words on paper, but the resolution calls for censuring him without binding clauses which say Schiff purposely deceived his committee, Congress, and the American people, and he purposely encouraged and excused abusive intelligence investigations of Americans for political purposes. They scrubbed that language. Why? Why was that language scrubbed? Well, ultimately, I guess you have to conclude that the Speaker of the House wanted it that way. I guess. I have another story in front of me, just, while we're on this. GOP's Boebert wants to impeach Biden, but House Speaker McCarthy has other plans. This from the Associated Press. A surprise effort by hard-right House Republican. Hard-right. They're supposedly sitting on information that this husk has collected tens of millions of dollars from foreign governments while vice president. Is there any question? A Chinese spy balloon, a wide-open border. News yesterday from the Wall Street Journal that China is talking to Cuba about setting up a military base 100 miles to our south. Trying to use the Labor Department to force vaccinations on every one of us as a condition of keeping our job. That's just off the top of my head this morning, reasons why you should impeach this bastard. And old Kevin can't see fit to hard right Republicans, Fast Eddie, want to impeach him. Hard right.
Hard right.
Hard right. How about anybody that has any decency? How about anybody that values the sovereignty of America, of being an American? Borders, culture, security, the economy, the law. Hard right. The impeachment resolution, which charges Biden with high crimes and misdemeanors over his handling of the U.S. border with Mexico. And see, and that's what I mean. I appreciate but that's hardly it. Daily Beast reporting that Marjorie Taylor Greene calls Boebert a little biatch on the House floor yesterday. Did you see that?
You read about it. I didn't see it.
Marjorie Taylor Greene has become a soft ally of Kevin McCarthy's in a weird... this is the lady they used to accuse of talking about Jewish space lasers. And she was considered the lunatic of all lunatics in the House. Now suddenly she's aligned with Kevin McCarthy, and she's swell, and she's supposedly calling Lauren Boebert names. What's going on there?
I don't know. And Chris, did you notice, too, that Marjorie Taylor Greene was the dartboard for the left all of last year?
Now it's gone.
It's it's been very soft since McCarthy's been speaker.
She's also changed. She's aligned with McCarthy now. She's whipping votes for McCarthy. She's standing with McCarthy at every turn. She stood with him to become speaker. I don't know what it means. You can interpret that any way you want. But to go from a lunatic Jewish space laser lightning rod to pals with Kevin McCarthy and nobody talks about it anymore, and Lauren Boebert now is the B.I.H. Okay. I don't know what's going on other than this is an ineffectual bunch of nonsense. Gorka said it at our cigar event. He said that Matt Gaetz basically told him the House Oversight Committee is shooting BB guns at the Great Wall. They don't even understand how to navigate what they have. It was not a terribly optimistic report Gorka had from talking to people on the inside of the House Oversight Committee that they were going to be able to accomplish much with the information that they had. But anyway, McCarthy has negotiated a deal with Boebert to send the Biden impeachment resolution for review to the Judiciary and Homeland Security Committees, fending off a vote for some time. I think it's best for everybody, McCarthy told reporters late yesterday. But in a sign of the right flank's determination to push ahead, Boebert said that if the committee's slow roll action, she'll bring her resolution back to the floor every day for the rest of my time in Congress. The tense 24-hour episode underscores is that what brought the Marjorie Taylor Greene B.I.H. comment?
Yeah.
So can you imagine that Marjorie Taylor Greene is now name-calling Lauren Boebert for wanting to impeach Joe Biden? What through the looking glass moment is this?
2 years ago, Marjorie Taylor Greene would be the one looking to impeach Joe Biden just because.
In fact, I would bet we could probably go through our own archives of Marjorie Taylor Greene promising that she would impeach Biden if he won election. In fact, I think, if memory serves, I feel like Marjorie Taylor Greene even said that she was prepared to impeach Biden if he wins election or something to that effect. I feel pretty confident. Or right after he won, she said she would impeach him or something to that. Whatever. I guess what I'm here to tell you is, for as kind of positive and optimistic as I was at the beginning of this House Republican takeover, are you starting to feel a little less inspired? I'm starting to feel a little less inspired. I don't mean to bum you out any further than we're already all bummed out, but this crew does not seem to be terribly impressive to me. What do you want, the Durham hearing yesterday? Did that impress you? Anything good come of that? I didn't watch it. I don't. These House Republicans don't impress me. Nothing they do is interesting to me anymore. They bore me to tears. Nothing's going to come of it. Do you know the one question that I hear every time, everywhere I go, all the time? It is the single. I was just having dinner with a friend of mine last night, and I said to him, here's my struggle as a talk show host. I sit here behind the microphone and I give you the daily war report. That's effectively my job. That's what I'm paid to do. Offer you commentary and observation about the news in front of me. What's the one question or observation or statement that I hear every time I'm out talking with people that consume this show? It's the one thing I hear every single time in mass.
Chris, could you maybe on tomorrow's show, could you tell us what we can do about it?
That's one. That's right. Yes. Or related is not what are we going to do about it, or who's going to be held accountable, which is the same. It's a cousin to the same thing. When are people going to be held accountable, and what can we do about this? And I can't answer either of those for you. And it occurs to me that every day I deliver this information to you, it drives you more crazy, and you continue to, you don't feel any more satiated. In fact, you feel louder and more irritated, and you say louder and with more passion and understandable frustration. When are people going to pay? What can we do about this? Do you have a good answer for it?
Yes.
You do?
I do.
Okay.
We have to win elections. I know that's broad, but when I looked at, I got the the inside look at what happened in this mayoral race, Chris. And what they were doing.
You're talking about in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia. But this is how they're winning nationwide every single time in swing states. Do you remember the story? Sadly, one of the canvassers got shot and killed by another canvasser, yep. So that was for a group called Vote PA. Vote PA, the unions, Reclaim Philly. All of these different groups are out door knocking. And they're not just knocking on the door once to talk about a candidate. They're knocking on the door 3 weeks later. Hey, did you request your ballot? Then they come 3 weeks later. Hey, did you turn in your ballot? You can check the Department of State website to see if you've done it. So we have to put in that work, and it's hard work. It's not easy.
Kansas City had municipal elections this week. 10% turnout. 10% of registered voters in Kansas City turned out, and 4 of 6 seats on the council were won by what I think in Philadelphia is called the Working Families Party. Because these people, it's not that's not the name, but it's a cousin, lunatic left fringe group. Oh, yeah. My point is, to your point, these people do nothing but round the clock 365 meet, organize, plan, strategize. They have war rooms for every single office, from dog catcher to president of the United States. They are coming. They're coming for every legislative seat in every state capital. They're coming for every Senate seat, every House seat, every council seat, every mayoral seat. They're coming. They're strategizing. You're right. They have a war room set up for every single election. And so when people say, what can we do? It's what Gorka says. What are you doing? What are you personally doing? What are you personally involved with in helping organize? Because we don't. We're not organizers. We don't organize. We're cats. We're herding cats. We're all individuals. And, we can't even, and I'm not suggesting that we all become mind-numb robots like them. That's the beauty of being a conservative. We all have our own points of view and our own positions. And we like to be left alone, and we like to leave people alone. Unfortunately, they don't. They are automatons, they are mind-numb robots, and they all work with a singular focus and purpose, and that's to win. Win at all costs. I mean, look at, you want another example? This is a little more benign, and it's something that most people don't even notice is political. But it's a great example. It's always thinking 10 steps ahead. Democrats are always thinking 10 steps ahead. They're not dealing with the fire in front of them. They're looking down the road. Case in point. 2 weeks ago, a tanker truck runs down an off-ramp of I-95, flips over under an overpass, catches fire, 8,500 gallons of fuel catch fire, burns so hot, the steel and the concrete melt and collapse the bridge overpass on I-95, a major thoroughfare through Philadelphia. Within 48 hours, the fairly newly elected governor of Pennsylvania, a guy called Josh Shapiro, who has been running for president since he was born, I suspect, who Philadelphia media have been christening as the next president of the United States since he was first elected county commissioner from his home county. Josh Shapiro's first order of business was to turn the I-95 bridge collapse, a tragic accident, a guy who flipped a fuel truck in the worst possible place. I mean, not that flipping a fuel truck's ever good, but it's like you'd almost swear it was purposeful the way it happened, because it's like, really, of all the places in the world to flip a fuel truck. But okay, so an interstate collapses. And I came on the air the day after the interstate collapsed, and I said, this can't, you got to hurry and fix this. This has got to be an all-hands-on-deck thing. Now, do you think the Republican Party, if we had a Republican governor in Pennsylvania, do you think they'd pull off what Josh Shapiro did? Within 48 hours, Josh Shapiro decided to turn it into a rallying cry. He saw an opportunity here, and he turned it into a game. He turned it into a sporting event. He said, watch me. I'm going to lead the fastest rebuilding effort of a bridge in the history of the country. And I'm going to install a camera so everybody can watch it. And I'm going to have Pennsylvania road crews working round the clock, 24/7. And he held press conferences. He brought the president in. And he showed off this brand new technology, which, I have some questions, by the way, about this. Like, if we have technology to build bridges in 2 weeks, and we have this new material that's apparently just as strong as concrete and steel to hold a bridge up on I-95, why is it taking 4 and 5 years to get roads fixed? But I'll set that aside for now to illustrate my point. They mount a camera. It becomes a thing. And if you're anywhere in and around the Philadelphia metro area, people are watching this like people watch pandas being born at the zoo. Seriously. I've heard more people talking about, are you watching the I-95 camera? They've turned this into a thing, a spectacle. I said a sporting event. Well, the announcement came yesterday, and I didn't get to it. The announcement came that Josh Shapiro announces we will open these temporary I-95 lanes by the weekend. It's about 2 calendar weeks from collapse to rebuild. 2 calendar weeks. Impressive. No doubt about it. Highly impressive. But beyond that, what's he done? Social media. They've been making memes. He calls up the Phillies. He calls up the Philadelphia Phillies organization. And don't you doubt that's exactly what he did. He called them. His team called them. And the Phillies are great people. And they think this is a great idea. Why not? Savvy. This is Democrat thinking. You want to hear? Let's walk this out. I want you to know how Democrats think and how Republicans don't. A massive bridge collapse, and Josh Shapiro thinks, now's my time to shine. I can make lemonade out of these lemons. Remember the disaster in East Palestine? That did not go well for him. He signed off on lighting that derailed train car. He signed off on lighting it on fire. And then when the toxic fumes and the toxic water became a problem, he, ran to the front of the line again and started scolding Norfolk Southern for the spill. But he's the one that signed off on basically creating a toxic cloud over East Palestine. But he gets a pass because he vilified the greedy corporate bastards later. So that didn't go so well. That was sort of a rare stumble for the wonderkind. But this time, he saw an opportunity. So he mounts a camera for everybody to watch. He comes up with some, I don't know. I mean, to his credit, I'm actually crediting him. To his credit, he got people together in a room and said, how fast can we build this bridge? And somebody said, hey, we got this new material we're experimenting with. Good, let's use it. How fast can we do it? Round the clock. I'll spend whatever we got to spend. Well, I suppose all of us together 24/7 round the clock for 2 weeks with this temporary material, we could probably, good, do it. Whatever you got to do it. He made this a public show because this is a federal highway. And remember, he wants to be president of the United States since he's out of the womb. This is an opportunity for him. So now that we're close and he's about to reopen these 2 lanes, he calls up the Philadelphia Phillies and he goes to the game. And he says, I've got this great idea, Phillies. You should do. I think it would be very nice. It'd be a very nice touch. Because these men and women who work very, very hard for the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, they've been working 24/7, nose to the grindstone, round the clock. They've been working so hard. You know what we should do? We should honor them at a Phillies game. We should honor the PennDOT crews at the Phillies game for their hard work. And the Phillies naturally said, well, that sounds like a great idea. Of course we'll do that. And so Dan Baker, the PA announcer at the Phillies game, he did it. They rolled it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Philadelphia Phillies would like to honor the PennDOT crew who's working round the clock a bit. Lovely, lovely sentiment, right? Everyone applauds and stands and applauds. But wait. Was there a single member of any PennDOT crew or organizationally formally had anybody affiliated with PennDOT in the stands when the camera pivots? The camera pivots as Dan's, we at the Phillies, all of us stand and applaud the heroic efforts of PennDOT. And then the camera pans, and the Jumbotron at Citizens Bank Park shows, who, Fast Eddie? PennDOT crews in hard hats with vests? Did you see PennDOT crews in the stands?
Oh, no.
No, I didn't either. I didn't see. Now, here's Jim Johnson, the head of PennDOT, to throw out the first pitch. Did you see that? I didn't see that. No. Who was sitting there all by himself, waving and smiling and pumping his fist like Rosie the Riveter, like he'd really achieved something big? Who was it?
Josh Shapiro.
Bingo! The governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, the wonderkind, pumping his arms like he's Superman. And a lingering shot, a much longer shot than any Phillies game would ever take of any other organization. I mean, like Marines who just got out of a firefight, to capture Osama bin Laden wouldn't get the loving, lingering camera shot the Phillies gave Josh Shapiro, pumping his arms in the air like he'd really done something remarkable. Oh, dear God, what a hero. Oh, my God, the heroism of Josh Shapiro. Oh, dear Lord, love him. Kids, look at that. Now, there's a hero right there. Josh Shapiro. That's a man's man. Chisel him in granite. Build that man a statue. I-95, 2 weeks. Wow. Wow. You see? They always see an opportunity. They're always looking down the road. They're always thinking 5 steps ahead. What are we doing? Slap fights on the House floor about whether or not we should fine Adam Schiff. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the fundamental difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. So when you say, what are we doing? What can we do? We need a party that's a hell of a lot smarter. And that's not a fix, unfortunately, you and I can make overnight. It isn't that I don't think it's impressive to get a bridge rebuilt in 2 weeks. In fact, somebody said, hey, Chris, the reason construction takes forever is because you got to keep the trades busy with work so that the effort is stretched out over time and they don't sit idle. Well, probably that's true. I can't speak to it specifically because I don't know, but I think that sounds about right. For instance, when the government, remember when Obama had the big stimulus, spent shovel-ready jobs? Remember that? Shovel-ready jobs. You know why that's a lie? For the very reason the guy on Twitter just said. When you hear government officials say, we're going to stimulate the economy by creating good shovel-ready jobs. We're going to start building infrastructure out there. Do you know why that doesn't make sense as a stimulus? Do you know the answer to that?
I don't believe I do.
Because it ends. When you fix a bridge, the bridge is fixed. It's over.
Yep.
It's not an ongoing, it shouldn't be anyway. In theory, it's not supposed to be an ongoing job that's paying you a salary for years. You fix a bridge, it's over.
Yep.
And I'm reminded, by the way, Josh Shapiro probably learned from one of the best governors out there. as to how you can, and I'm not saying that he did it cynically. I think he just did it with leadership. And in fact, frankly, he didn't really get the credit he was due. Ron DeSantis of Florida, after a major hurricane, Ron DeSantis rebuilt a major bridge expansion, the Pine Island Bridge, it's called, rebuilt in 3 days after Hurricane Ian destroyed the original bridge. In fact, you go back and you look at the stories they wrote about it. Now, they'll never write this about a guy like Democrat Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, but they wrote about it, DeSantis. A rebuilt bridge could play a big role in DeSantis' campaign. As Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is set to embark on a multi-day swing through several early voting states, his leadership in the days after Hurricane Ian is expected to play a big part in his campaign message. While speaking to select media outlets, one day after his official announcement, DeSantis highlighted the quick rebuild of the Pine Island Bridge and the Sanibel Causeway. It's an example he's given several times. Just 3 days after construction began, a replacement bridge was opened. DeSantis often uses the quick response to highlight his leadership. I've said, let's build a wall. I will send my guys to build the Pine Island Bridge to the southern border to build the wall. The Pine Island Bridge, if it becomes a fixture of the DeSantis presidential campaign, Larry Solinger, owner of the Malchata Menagerie, a gift shop at Pine Island Road, believes it will highlight the governor's accomplishments. The response was excellent, in my opinion. Things got done. I still remember the day the Publix trucks went by here. It gave you goosebumps. That's their grocery store. Meanwhile, across the street at a barbecue joint, the owner worries Pine Island has been forgotten. I think I could talk to 100 customers who would say the same thing. The storm passed. We're 6 months later? People like me are technically homeless. I have friends just now getting electricity at their house. Blah, blah, blah. My point is, I said, do we have Republicans who are smart like Shapiro? I think DeSantis is as smart as Shapiro. More authentic, not as sleazy. Not sleazy at all, really. I have no reason to think DeSantis is sleazy at all. But, if I'm to be honest, if I'm to be sincere, when it comes to strategic political operations and communications and messaging, if I'm to be honest with you, there is one Republican, and that's Ron DeSantis. He does play the game that I just laid out Josh Shapiro is playing. He does play it. And I'm not, again, there's an element of, Fast Eddie and I were just talking about this. It doesn't, if a major thoroughfare like I-95 opens, it benefits everybody. And so naturally people are going to be impressed. They're going to be, that was fast. And you have to give credit to leadership for getting it done. You have to. There's no taking it away. The question is, does the savvy politician understand how to capitalize on it to strengthen their hand, to give them more credibility and leverage going forward? Bridges are powerful metaphors. Do the politicians who take on these projects, do they understand? People like Bill Clinton, for instance, running on the very slogan, building a bridge to the 21st century. Bridges are political metaphors. You almost hope, you don't want death, but you almost hope for a bridge problem so you can very specifically talk about building a bridge and doing it with great speed and efficacy. So DeSantis has capitalized on his. Shapiro is capitalizing on his. Are there many other Republicans that you can think of who do that well like that? Not really. I mean, when you look at Shapiro and you see coming from downtown the political artistry of taking an opportunity and seizing it, you think to yourself, we don't have anybody like that. We do have one. We do. And that's DeSantis. However, having said that, there's a disconnect, and I don't know what it is. I've been studying it and trying to figure it out myself. While he was doing it in Florida, he got great attaboys and accolades, certainly from this show and so many of us in the audience. But there's something now, I don't know, getting lost in translation or at least in the offing, the connection has been lost. And remember, we go back to East Palestine. Remember, I said it then. When Donald Trump got on his jet and flew to East Palestine, Ohio, when no Democrat would go near it, Joe Biden never went, by the way. To this day, Joe Biden's never been. Little Pete showed up, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks after that disaster in his little hard hat. I think maybe the EPA administrator eventually went there. Those people have just long been forgotten. Nobody's talked about them ever since. Who went, though? Who went pretty quickly? Donald Trump decided to go. Donald Trump jumps on his jet, flies to East Palestine. He walks around. Remember, he's in the overcoat and he's walking through the streets of East Palestine. These townspeople are just lining the streets. So excited to see this man. He walks into a McDonald's and he buys everyone in the place. He says, hey, hamburgers for everybody. He buys the whole town burgers at McDonald's. And I said, if you go back and listen to some of the shows where I talked about that, I said, you can't, I don't care who you are, nobody can do that. No one can walk into a disaster in a town like East Palestine and instantly connect with struggling townspeople like that guy can. Not Ron DeSantis, not Josh Shapiro, not Joe Biden. Nobody can do it like he can. I've never seen anything like it. And that is not a knock on Ron DeSantis. It's a skill. So I don't think Trump is nearly as politically nimble or cynical or even capable of seeing something and saying, let's seize on that. I don't. But Donald Trump is profoundly aware of his power of connectivity and imagery. So he's able to inject himself in a situation like East Palestine and capitalize on it in a way and connect with folks. But when it comes to, it's interesting, he doesn't get credit for things like wall building. He doesn't get credit for things like, he wants credit for Operation Warp Speed. But that has since become a major criticism of his. And so he's probably going to have to back away from that and not talk about it. He engineered an incredibly robust economy. But it's these tangibles, it's these physical things where you can point to and go, I built that bridge in 2 weeks, fist pump. I was in the stands at the Phillies game. I built that bridge. Ron DeSantis said, look what I did. I physically got it done. Whereas Trump has a connectivity with people. They think maybe he doesn't get the credit for, quote, getting it done, but he gets the credit for understanding people where they live. I think there's a distinct difference. And it's not entirely fair to say Trump doesn't get credit for getting things done, but I think you know what I mean. There's sort of the political promises made, promises kept, and then there's the man of the people, I feel your pain connectivity that I would say Bill Clinton was the last one in modern times who had it like Trump has it today. People believed Bill Clinton felt their pain. It was all BS. But remember, he'd get that twinkle in the eye and wag that bony finger. You know, he didn't have sex with that woman, and people believed him. He was very charming. Every time he was in a room, he would look at someone and make them feel like they were the only person in the room he was talking to. And some woman would share her tale of woe, and he'd walk down off the stage, and he'd stand, 2 feet from her and stare her right in the eye, and she'd melt. And everyone would melt watching him care. Trump has that same magic. It's a different kind of connectivity, but he has the same thing. Shapiro and DeSantis don't have that. They have sort of big picture, wow, look at how they lead. But they don't have a connectivity with the folks like a Trump or a Clinton. So it's two different kinds of politics. We'll see. And I'm a fan of both. I see the efficacy of both. I do. But this current Republican Party is I don't know. The Durham, you want to hear some of the Durham stuff? I mean, I like Jim Jordan a lot. I do. But like you, I always wonder, these House hearings, they make for great audio. I mean, we can play some really great audio and be entertained by it, but then what? Makes for a great show? We've had a great show?
It's like zingers. It's just like, it's like winning a battle on Twitter.
Yeah, it's like we're watching a roast every day.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, what of it? What comes from it? So, I don't know. What do you like? Let's listen to a little Jim Jordan yesterday on this was the John Durham hearings. This is the guy that investigated Russia collusion and ultimately comes out with, what is not considered the strongest of condemnation for the Department of Justice and the FBI, but certainly concludes that the FBI is broken. The Democrats hate John Durham. They think he's an enemy now, and they treat him as such in this hearing. Here's some Jim Jordan.
3 years ago and 11 months, July 24th, 2019, Bob Mueller sat in this room, in that chair, and told this committee, no collusion, no conspiracy, no coordination between President Trump and Russia. None. What the Democrats say? We don't care. We're going to keep going after President Trump. In fact, they didn't even wait one day. The next day, the phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky became the basis for their impeachment. Republicans said maybe instead of the never-ending attacks on President Trump, maybe the country would be better off if we figured out how the whole false Trump-Russia narrative started. After 2.5 years of the Mueller investigation, 19 lawyers, 40 agents, $30 million, where they found nothing, maybe we should figure out how the whole lie started. And that's exactly what Mr. Durham has done. In his report, he told us how the dossier was funded. He told us who funded, how eager the FBI was to use it, how they put the dossier in a FISA draft application just 2 days after receiving it. He told us that not one single substantive allegation in the dossier was ever corroborated, ever validated, yet it was used to spy on an American citizen associated with the presidential campaign.
Yeah. Now, on this committee sits Adam Schiff, the guy they voted to censure yesterday. A guy who literally used this storyline and abused this committee. He chaired this committee. Adam Schiff sat on this committee as the chair, knowing the lies that Durham has ultimately uncovered and made public for all of us to consume. And the House Republicans could see fit only to basically slap him on the hand, not fine him, not even give him any kind of binding punishment, not try to expel him. He abused this committee, and yet he's running for Senate in California and sat there yesterday, smugly attempting to rake Durham over the coals.
I'd like to yield the balance of my time to my colleague from California, Mr. Schiff.
Mr. Durham, DOJ policy provides that you don't speak about a pending investigation, and yet you did, didn't you?
I'm not exactly sure what
when the Inspector General issued a report saying that the investigation was properly predicated, you spoke out in violation of Department of Justice policy to criticize the Inspector General's conclusions, didn't you?
I issued a public statement. I didn't do it anonymously. I didn't do it through third persons.
But nonetheless, you violated department policy by issuing a statement while your investigation was ongoing, didn't you?
I don't know that. If I did, then I did, but I was not aware that I was violating some policy.
And you also sought to get the Inspector General to change his conclusion, did you not? When he was concluding that the investigation was properly predicated, did you privately seek to intervene to change that conclusion?
This is outside the scope of the report, but if you want to go there, we asked the Inspector General to take a look at the intelligence that's included in the classified appendix that you looked at, and said that that ought to affect portions of his report.
And you thought it was appropriate for you to intervene with an independent investigation by the Inspector General because he was reaching a conclusion you disagreed with. You thought that was appropriate.
That's not, the premise isn't right. The Inspector General circulated a draft memo to a number of agencies and persons. Our group was one of them. We were asked to review that draft and bring to his attention any concerns that we had or disagreements.
And when he refused to change his report, you violated
Mr. Chairman, I insist on regular order.
Well, it's not even his time. It's Ms. Lofgren's time. So the gentleman yields back to Ms. Lofgren, who's not here.
So I mean, it's amazing that this scumbag sits up there with the sanctimony that he does. Again, he was censured for what that's worth yesterday. And he sits there with the smug sanctimony to rake Durham, the special investigator, over the coals. This guy Cohen, this hideous creature from Tennessee, this Democrat, Steve Cohen, number 18.
your reputation will be damaged. As everybody's reputation who gets involved with Donald Trump is damaged, he's damaged goods. There's no good dealing with him because you will end up on the bottom of a pyre. I yield back the balance of my time.
Sure.
Can we
presume the gentleman's undecided on how he feels about the former president?
Gentlemen, the witness can respond.
Yeah, my concern about my reputation is with the people who I respect and my family and my Lord. And I'm perfectly comfortable with my reputation with them, sir.
I mean, they're vicious. This man investigated and proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that they lied. They flat-ass lied to frame the President of the United States, to suggest that he colluded with a foreign government to win an election. They flatly lied. They knew they lied. The guy that chaired the committee for these loathsome Democrats lied. He was proven to have lied. He was censured on this very day, and they sit there and they attack the investigator with all the smug satisfaction as if they have truth on their side. Democrats are not shamed. Does everyone understand that? Did the Republicans understand that? These people aren't shamed. There is no shame. They can't be embarrassed.
That's why Democrats win.
They will win at all costs, and even when it's proven they're lying, they still say, I don't care what your proof is. My truth is my truth. They are unflappable. They are unrelenting. They are shameless. And we have slap fights on the House floor about whether or not we'll put a fine in or out, because I'm not sure it's in the Constitution, good sir. I'm from Kentucky. The Constitution. Right. Excellence in dentistry. That's what you're going to get at Williamsburg Dental. My friend Bob Spinato is back on the phone. He's in Broomall, just off the Blue Route. And with 2 new associates, now you can expand and offer more hours, maybe evening hours, possibly weekends, Bob.
Yeah, one of the things that I told them from early on when they started with me was the value of not only their own time, but other people's times. And they run on a similar schedule that I do. If you've got a 1 o'clock appointment, you're in their chair at 1 o'clock. And it's something that across the board at Williamsburg Dental, we really pride ourselves on, whether it's an appointment with the hygienist or whether it's an appointment with one of our doctors. The other thing is we now have some expanded hours in the evenings, and even there's some discussion about opening again on some Saturdays for services.
Yeah, but not you. You're fishing. You're not kidding anybody. It's not you going to be working on Saturday. Come on,
well, I'm in my 33rd year, and it should be the young guns.
That's right. You've earned it. You've earned it.
I feel like I have. Thank you.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. Yesterday, Riley Gaines was testifying before a Senate subcommittee on this issue of biological men pretending to be women and competing against women in sports. There was a particularly interesting exchange. It's just amazing how devastating facts can be when you have them at your fingertips. A Democrat witness, basically they're holding the position that she's fine with it. There's nothing wrong with biological men competing against women. In fact, I can point to all kinds of success stories where men can't take women head-to-head. So what's the big deal? And she brings up the Williams sisters. Riley, though, quickly swoops in with the hip check. It's just fabulous. Take a listen to this exchange.
Women,
you don't
some that are
believe
short.
that a biological male has a physical advantage in sports over a biological female?
Not as a definitive statement.
Give me an example. Well, no, I don't think. How many female members of the NBA do you see?
Well, I can say that, there's been this news article about men that think that they could beat Serena Williams in tennis, right? That they think that they could actually score a point on her. And it's just not the case. She is stronger than that.
What's your experience, Ben? Male, female?
Both Serena and Venus lost to the 203rd ranked male tennis player, which they're phenoms for women. My experience, my husband, he swam at University of Kentucky as well. In terms of accolades and in terms of national ranking, I was a much better swimmer than him. He could kick my butt any day of the week without trying.
That was just fabulous. Because, as usual, they just say things unchallenged. Oh, Venus and Serena Williams no man can beat them. To which Riley Gaines replies, actually, a man did take them on and beat them soundly. The 203rd ranked man in the world in tennis cleaned the clocks of the Williams sisters, actually, as a matter of fact. And I went to the internet just to check it out because I didn't know what she was talking about. Sure enough, look it up. Yes, a man did challenge the Williams sisters and nearly swept them both. Paula Scanlan is a former University of Pennsylvania swimmer. She was actually a competitor alongside a teammate of the person we now refer to as Lia Thomas, who made so much news standing there on the podium at the end of the meet versus Riley Gaines. And Ms. Scanlan, glad to have you here. I understand you're part of the Independent Women's Forum, the same team that Riley's a part of. So really great to talk with you for the first time. I know you sat down with Matt Walsh for a wide-ranging conversation on this subject. So glad to have you in the conversation pool, as it were, on this front. Good morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And I know you're Philly-based, so
yeah,
that's definitely where this issue started.
Yeah, the University of Pennsylvania has become the epicenter of everything insane. How do you feel about having competed there, and kind of what do you make of your time there, and the fact that it's always at the center of so many cultural flashpoints, it seems?
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of shame at times. Obviously, I had good experiences in college. No one's experience is all one thing. But, yeah, I definitely don't feel a pull to go back anytime soon.
Why did you go? Did you go there to swim, or did you go there for a certain study?
So my brother and my parents actually also went to the University of Pennsylvania. So they weren't athletes. So it was just, if I swim in college, like, am I going to be able to do it at a D1 level? That was, like, the big question. And I basically, I was able to do that, but, you know, my entire family went there and they had a great experience. Then I went there and it wasn't the same experience that they had.
Sincere question. When was the first time, I assume you've been competitively swimming since a young age?
Yes.
Yeah. When was the first time that you remember, what age do you remember the first time you heard this concept of a biological male pretending to be a woman and competing against you? When was the first time you heard of that concept?
Well, we would always joke about it. So when we were younger on my team, we would always say, like, oh, you know, what's stopping one of the boys from just putting on my suit and pretending to be me? Like, it was a joke. And our coach actually said, oh, you shouldn't be allowed to do that before, like, if you don't transition before the age of 12. Like, my coach would always joke about that, like, in literally middle school. So it wasn't like, was he serious? That was a legitimate conversation when you were in middle school? No, because we all thought it was absurd. Nobody ever thought that would be a reality. And we would just joke around about it. And that was the only time it ever really crossed my mind. And it's the only time it would be a possibility that men would be competing in women's sports is if someone stole my suit and competed as me, or competed as one of my competitors, and, like, someone allowed them to compete that way.
The reason I ask, because you're a young woman, and the reason I ask is, you know, I'm pushing 50, so I don't want to sound like an old timer who just doesn't get the way kids are talking these days. But I mean, you're young, so I was genuinely curious. Like, when did young people start to hear biological men could pretend to be women and compete? I didn't know if that was a thing that was common, and I just didn't know it was going on amongst young people. But you're saying no, you hadn't seriously heard about it till what, college or high school?
Yeah, well, I think in high school I'd heard about there's a Harvard swimmer that transitioned from a woman to a man. So I'd heard about that, but I really just didn't think. I assumed that there would be rules in place that would not allow this to happen. I assumed that people were intelligent enough to make proper rules and not allow biological men in women's sports. I assume because the other way doesn't really matter, right? Like, yeah. It doesn't harm any men having a woman in their events. And there are actually plenty of sports that do have open categories. For example, I know sailing, there's a women's category and there's an open category, so you could team up with a man on your team, and they allow you to do that. So I was hoping that we would be protected, and we just weren't.
You know, you heard Riley Gaines there in her testimony yesterday before the Senate. Paula Scanlan with us, former University of Pennsylvania swimmer and a teammate of this person we now call Lia Thomas. she said something really important, and it's funny because it's considered, I guess, objectionable or something now. She's a highly decorated female swimmer, but she says if I get in the pool and compete against my husband, he cleans my clock. And it's like I don't know why, women who excel in women's sports are fantastic, but women and men are. It's so strange that you even have to say it aloud, but there's certain people that tell themselves it's not true, that men are not physically any stronger or better in competition than women. And it's just, it's demonstrably not true. And I don't know why. What do you think it is culturally that causes people to struggle to say that? Does it make women feel less than or something?
I don't know. I think women in general are more agreeable, and I think that's part of the reason why we're in the predicament that we're in, I would say.
Like, does it hurt? A sincere question. Does it hurt your feelings to say, while you swam at a D1 level, if you jump in a pool with a man is going to probably defeat you because he's just a physically different makeup? Is that I don't know, is that something women don't like or resent? Or I'm really trying to get into the psychology of it, to be honest with you.
Personally, I don't, but I think a lot of people that are trying very hard to destroy gender norms and destroy the normal, if they admit that, that's a slippery slope for them, because it opens up all these things that are like, oh, well, if women are slower, then that means that, women are more likely to do this or do that. And so I think that's based on it. But I think most normal women are able to admit that men are stronger than them. I don't think that I have a hard time admitting that. I know very well that any, male swimmer can beat me any day of the week.
And so when a biological male joins your team as one of you, this has got to be extraordinarily uncomfortable, because you don't want to sound like you're not an inclusive person or a kind person or a sympathetic person, I assume. The culture is such that you got to stay quiet about this stuff, because this is someone who's struggling with identity, and so we need to be inclusive and kind. How long did you feel kind of trapped culturally to speak up and say something about Lia Thomas?
Yeah, that was exactly it. I thought speaking out about this was wrong because I was going to be potentially hurting someone's feelings. And I coped with that for a very, very long time. And it wasn't really until the past few months before I came out publicly with my story that I really understood that it's not about that. And, okay, yes, I might hurt someone's feelings, but this is about women as a whole. And if I can't stand up for all the women because I want to protect a man, then I had no reason to have the opinion anymore. So I had to do something with it. But they definitely do a very good job of making sure women don't want to speak about this, and they definitely toy with our emotions in the sense that they know women are agreeable. They know women don't want to make a fuss, and they know that we don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Paula Scanlan with us, former University of Pennsylvania swimmer and a teammate of Lia Thomas. Honestly, and I don't want you to betray confidences, but I'm speaking just generally. Can you now confirm or deny that when you with your fellow women swimmers were in private together, I'm sure many of them who have still not spoken out today, but in private, was there a single one of you who you believe sincerely thought this was right? Or were all of you, do you think, in private in agreement that this was wrong? Or would you hesitate to speak for everyone that you swam with?
I can't speak for everyone, obviously, and I've never taken that stance. There were girls who strongly supported this, Lia swimming, and there were girls who were against it, but privately against it. For the most part, I would say if I categorized it, most people knew to some extent it was unfair. Whether that means, oh, Lia should actually be banned from swimming, that was not really part of the conversation, but to some extent, I would say 80% at least of the team knew it was wrong to some extent.
Now I'm going to ask a really tough question. Were the women who were supportive of it very good?
Yeah, actually, some of them were.
Really?
One of them was a team record holder, actually.
That surprises me. I would have assumed that the most competitive and the most talented swimmers would have been against this, because it's a direct threat to their own ranking, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, one of the girls was a strong supporter. I think it was. They were very close friends. So that's at the competitive level. Maybe you understand that. But when you're close friends with someone for many years, you want to support every decision that they make. And this is one of those situations where it was. I'm not supportive of swimming or competition or whatever. I'm supportive of my best friend.
I see.
So that was some of those people who were more supportive were definitely closer friends with me.
As long as she's not swimming against him, I wonder, would she feel that way if she lost to a biological male? That's what's curious to me. Like, you work and work and work your whole life to get to a certain level, and then you lose to someone who's not even your gender. And what you feel, you're supposed to feel good about that because of what, quote, progress? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, that's what they made us believe. They said, oh, it's okay. Like, and the girls at Harvard were told the same thing. Like, oh, it's okay if you lose because we're doing this in the name of equality, inclusion, and someone else's happiness. It's like so, it's so backwards. And the fact that I'm even on here having this conversation is just not somewhere I would have ever expected society would be. And it's so sad that we have to spend time and energy debating this when there are so many more important things we can be working on. But unfortunately, until women are protected, I'm going to be here talking about it.
Paula, it reminds me of years ago there was this group called Heaven's Gate, and this one guy managed to talk all of these people into wearing matching tracksuits and, drinking something where they all thought they were going to catch a comet to heaven. And, you walk in and you see a mass suicide. It's a cult. It's really weird, cultish thinking that sane people on the outside go, what happened to you? And they don't even hear themselves, in my opinion, sincerely. It's like it's almost cult-like thinking because it's your undoing. It's women, literally, women who would support this are cheering their own competitive demise.
Yeah, and I think at this point, I don't think we should even pretend anymore. Like, why don't we just get rid of women's sports? It'll save everyone some money, right? And then if I make that suggestion, oh my gosh, you're anti-feminism and all this horrible stuff. But I'm like, isn't that not where we're headed? We're just going to have two men's categories.
Paula Scanlan, former University of Pennsylvania swimmer. How does this end, do you think? Do you think that eventually, because to me, here's what I see. Younger people, younger than you, I'm talking about kids that are coming up in high school. I have a couple of kids in high school, one who just graduated. I'm starting to see that a lot of kids, younger kids culturally, are starting to push back almost to the extent I'm seeing it in faith communities. We're reading stories about Muslim communities, certainly Christian and Jewish communities, that are standing up and saying no. I feel like this gets pushed to a point that there will be a potentially vicious backlash, to be honest, if they're not careful. Do you see the culture changing amongst younger people, that they're not going to just stand by and stay quiet about it?
I do see the culture changing, but something that I find interesting is a lot of people see this happening and they're outraged, but then they continue to elect people in that don't stand for don't stand for what they want in this cause. So that's something I think where I want to focus on is we really need democratic people in government, whether at the state level or federal level, to start getting on board with this. Because I know there are Democrats that disagree with men in women's spaces, and I think we need to target them and really put their feet to the fire and make them make a stance. That's right. And I think that's where that goes. I think we need legislation, whether it's an executive order level or all of 50 states passing some type of legislation that defines what a woman is and vows to protect women. So I think that's the solution to this. And to get there, it's going to be a lot of work, but I'm going to be staying on board until we get this done.
Look, I'm glad you've joined the fight. I mean, I know Riley has. We've talked with her several times, and she's kind of made a point to call out a lot of professional women. So many of them have stayed quiet on it. But it's interesting. Some who are even kind of traditionally on the political left. Your Martina Navratilovas, for instance, who are certainly no conservatives, but on this issue, she recognizes, hey, women like me could not be the women we are and have the profiles we have if men were allowed to compete against me. I mean, she's smart enough to know it.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that don't align with me politically that are 100% behind me on this issue.
Yeah.
I think the funny thing is, Matt Walsh is obviously a right-winger, the amount of people in my life that are traditionally Democratic voters that watched my interview with him and saw my conversation with Matt, I found very interesting. So it just shows that, like, even though there's a lot of disagreement on this issue, there is a lot of support, even on the other side.
Yeah, is this an issue, just in your point of view? That's interesting you say that. You know, Matt Walsh is a well-known conservative and widely consumed, but he's also, you know, for people on the left, he's like garlic to a vampire. But you say that people watched that and said, I agree with you on that. I agree with him on this. Is this an issue then? My question is, as we talk about a presidential election, do you think this needs to be front and center? This is what would be called a cultural issue versus, say, economic, or you talk about foreign policy. Should this be front and center in your mind when talking to the American voter next year? I
would think so, in terms of what this issue actually stands for. So obviously, it's not just about sports. This really shows: do you guys believe in the difference between man and woman, and do you believe that women deserve to be protected from men in a lot of these cases? So obviously we went on the sports issue. That can then set the precedent for the prison systems. I'm not sure if you've been hearing about what's going on there. It would also help set the precedent of, like the locker rooms, the bathrooms, scholarships in college, right? Now, I guess men are technically going to be able to get women's scholarships and win women's awards. So I think this issue, the sports angle of it, is how we get the tide to turn on everything else. And I do think that this is a top issue. And I do think actually a lot of people running for president are interested in this issue.
Yeah. Do you think you mentioned that some of your younger friends or associates who aren't traditional Republican or conservative voters on this issue, they agree? I ask because do you think they could be persuaded to support a Republican candidate even though they don't vote Republican on this issue? Or is this enough?
That I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's something that I would love to see how that turns out in the next year. Because I think generally people always want to vote their party lines. It's like scary to take a change. But, unfortunately, I just don't see someone like Joe Biden coming out and saying he wants to support women on this.
No, he'll sniff a woman, but he's not going to support a woman. Paula Scanlan, sorry, cheap shot. Paula Scanlan, former University of Pennsylvania swimmer, now part of the Independent Women's Forum. Great to have you, Paula. You're welcome back here anytime. Thanks so much for speaking out. Okay, let me tell you, MyPillow has been absolutely outstanding to sleep on these last few weeks. The new MyPillow 2.0, I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I sleep like a baby. Between the Giza Dream Sheets I'm sleeping on, the MyPillow body pillow that I keep tucked in between my knees and on my arm every night. Between that and the MyPillow 2.0, this brilliant new pillow with the heat-dissipating fabric that keeps the pillow smooth and cool to the touch the whole night, tremendous. I love it. Even Dean now loves his MyPillow dog bed so much, he spends most of his time sleeping on it in the office. You go to MyPillow.com today, and you use my name, Chris Podcast. That's the promo code, Chris Podcast. When you do that, you save up to 66% on everything on the website, whether it's the slippers or the towels or the pillows or the anything. But on the pillow specifically, the MyPillow 2.0, you'll get a free MyPillow 2.0 when you order one if you use my name, Chris Podcast, as the promo code. So you can call them, you can go online. Either way, use the name Chris Podcast, and know this, that everything you buy at MyPillow.com comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. These are American-made products, every bit of it, American-made. And they are proud of what they stand behind as a product, and I can tell you they're really well-made quality products. So look, are they the cheapest products? Of course they're not. People get mad sometimes because they think the price point is a little higher. I understand. I mean, like, no pressure. I'm not telling you got to go buy it, but I'm just telling you, you get what you pay for. So MyPillow products are really high quality, and they're made here in the country, and they're guaranteed to last. So, you can buy something cheaper that'll fall apart on you, and you'll have to buy it again and spend equal amounts of money, or buy a really quality American-made product right now at MyPillow.com and save using my name, Chris Podcast, or call MyPillow today if you'd rather. 800-932-5056. 5056. Always glad to be joined by the deputy campaign manager for Donald Trump's 2016 run, still intimately involved in all things Trump as he pursues a second bite at the apple for the presidency. He's the president of Citizens United, Davie Bossie, back again. Mr. Bossie, glad to have you, sir. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Thanks for having me back.
You bet. No shortage of news this week. I know the president is not one to whine or complain, but it's just demonstrably true, and it's so outrageous when you see what came out of the Department of Justice related to Hunter Biden. Any fair-minded person, even if you're not a fan of Donald Trump, cannot conclude anything other than powerful people in power are taking care of themselves while trying to jail this man with 75 million voters who supported him, trying to jail him for the rest of his life. We've never seen anything like this, David, in American history.
No, you're exactly right. This is the stuff of third world dictators. That's what we as a nation have always looked upon. Countries whose leadership of their justice systems prosecute their political opponents, and we mock them, we disparage them, and we have that now happening right before our very eyes. Joe Biden is doing exactly what you just said. He's going to try to jail his opponent, whether he's the nominee or not. You know, he's not the presumptive. He is the by far leading, right, by all the polls, to be the nominee. And we'll see how that works out. But Joe Biden certainly looks like he thinks it's going to be him.
Yeah. Can I ask a sincere question? And I don't know if you're comfortable speaking to it or even can, but you know, Rachel Maddow kind of let the cat out of the bag a couple of weeks ago in the clip where she basically said, well, you know, if Trump just got out of this thing, if he just got out of the way, we could probably see past just dropping all this and moving on. Obviously, they want him to go away. I'm not sure I believe they'd leave him alone, but I do wonder, sincerely, you've been closer to Trump than most. Do you think it's ever crossed his mind, I don't need this. This is too much. Like, I've just, you know, my home's been raided. I've been twice impeached. I've been accused of colluding with foreign government. Now they want to jail me for the rest of my life. Okay, you win. I quit. I quit. Has it ever crossed his mind, do you suppose?
Well, I don't. Not that I've ever seen. He is. You
couldn't blame him. Is my point. You couldn't blame him if you felt that way.
Couldn't. Oh my goodness! What are you talking? Most people, I would say to you that your average person would absolutely say, "This is ridiculous. I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore," and go away and go live your life. Donald Trump is a different, breed of cat, and he's somebody who isn't going to be pushed. He's never been, somebody who can be pushed. But they're coming after him in a very serious way.
Like, what do you think motivates him? I mean, facing all of this, as serious as it is, what motivates him to say, "Hell with it, I'm running anyway"? What do you think it is?
He loves this country. You just go back to 2015, 2016 when he ran for the first time. He had to go up against the Hillary Clinton buzzsaw, okay, and the media, and then he had to do 4 years, in the White House under just circumstances nobody's ever found themselves. The FBI making up things, right, and launching investigations into you, politically motivated impeachments. It's never been done before, and he's had it all. He loves this country, and he understands that we're at a breaking point, right? And we're at an inflection point in our history that we either go one way or another. And I think that's really, you asked me what it motivates him. I think he believes that we have to save this country at all cost.
When you see, House Republicans struggling to even censure Adam Schiff, and Hunter Biden kind of basically get a slap on the hand, it's Voters are so dispirited, I don't have to tell you, David. And I mean, not about Trump in particular, but I hear this more than anything else when I'm out and talk with folks who listen. They say, where's the justice? What are we going to do about it? How can we fix it? Where's the accountability? I hear that more than anything else, and I never really have anything smart to say in response to that. Do you?
Yeah, no. That's the problem. That's the problem we're in right now. Yeah. People are dispirited. They see a two-tier justice system. They see Hunter Biden get a slap on the wrist for non-payment of federal taxes, which most Americans would never get that benefit. And then he gets a slap on the wrist. And then, by the way, it's an insult to the term slap on the wrist. Okay, he's not even getting a slap on the wrist. The gun charge, which is a felony gun charge, which other people go to prison for. Hunter Biden is going to have a misdemeanor, which will be dropped from his record at some future point if he doesn't break the law again. And it's literally outrageous, and that's why people think that this thing is rigged, that it is a problem, that they're going after President Trump, and that they don't go after the Biden family equally. And they didn't go after Hillary. You look at Hillary Clinton and what she did with her server, with her phones, with the destruction of emails and those classified documents that were there. It's just, how are you able to say that what Hillary Clinton did to take BleachBit, okay, to her servers, to take hammers to her phones, literally they destroyed them, physically destroyed the phones, so that the authorities could not get them, and she had a server where she stored her own emails. We know all of these things. Nothing was done about it.
And on the day of Trump's indictment, she thinks it's very, very funny and decides to sell but her email hats. Smiling all the way. I mean, it's like, not only is it two tiers of justice, they stick their middle finger in the air and almost poke and prod the rest of us to do something about it.
Yeah, no. It's devastating. It really is. For the American people, it's devastating.
May I ask you, David, I don't know, again, if you're part of these conversations, maybe you wouldn't presume to speak on this one way or the other, but I hear reports today that Donald Trump is still kind of iffy as to whether or not he'll participate in the first Republican debate. Are you aware one way or the other whether he intends to? And if he's not planning on it, would you tell him otherwise or no? If it were up to you.
Well, Chris, I actually am chairman of the Presidential Debate Committee.
I didn't know that. Forgive me. I didn't. Oh, good. I'm glad I asked this question then.
Yeah. So I've had I've had one-on-one meetings with every Republican potential candidate here, or candidate for potential nominee, and I've sat down with every single one of them to talk to them about the rules of the road and the criteria to make the debate stage and all of those things. And some people, they are desperate to get on the stage to be able to tell their story. Some are desperate to get on the stage to attack somebody else, whether it's Trump or DeSantis or what have you, to try to get their name out there. Debates, there's a whole strategy behind, attending a debate, right? Going to a debate or not going to debate. And I think that President Trump is right now trying to make decisions as to what's best for he and his campaign. The polling, which is what he, talks about, is that he's so far ahead. He did this on Brett Baer's show night before last, I believe, where he was talking about the polling and asked Brett Baer, why would I get on a stage when I'm 30 points up? And as a political strategist, you have to kind of understand that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's why give people a shot? But then you also say, well, you give people an opportunity to attack you. You're not there to answer. The night goes better potentially for you if you are there and you show everybody that's why I am 30 points. This is why I'm 30 points up. And then the night comes and goes, and you are, obviously you're in stronger position. So there's a strategy here, and I don't presume to know his at this point, but he's going to make, he's just like every other candidate, he's going to make his own decision. I personally believe it'll be a game decision. I don't think he's going to be making decisions. Oh yes, I'm going to do it, or no, I'm not going to do it up until, we get much closer to August 23rd, which is the date of the first debate in Milwaukee.
Oh, wow. So I'm really glad to know. I'm sorry I didn't, but I'm glad we have you, Davie Bossie, who, among other things, is now chairing these Republican debates. How many do you anticipate there will be in addition to this first one in late August?
Well, what we have planned is one per month starting in August up until the end of this year, which would be then 5 this calendar year. And then we would have potentially upwards of 3 in January because you have the Iowa caucus, you have the New Hampshire primary, and then you have whatever's going to happen in Nevada, either a caucus or a primary, and they haven't decided, but that's the first couple of days of February. So those 3 debates will all happen in January if necessary. And then you have you got Super Tuesday, you got then you have South Carolina debate in February, a Super Tuesday debate in February, and then potentially a Florida debate. So you have there's a lot of them. There's potentially about give or take 10 or 11 total if all of these happen. And just like in 2015, 2016, the last couple of debates, which were being planned, never took place because, President Trump was the presumptive nominee at some point earlier than those debates. So they didn't happen. But, and so here we have no idea how many you end up having. And we're taking this thing slow.
How about the issue of moderators? I know that's always been a really sticky wicket for President Trump in the past. Who do you guys choose, and how do you choose who's moderating these things?
Yeah, so what we are doing is we are pairing up conservative outlets, newspaper, television, conservative reporters, conservative commentators, with whoever is going to be the anchor. So, think about an ABC, NBC, CBS. They're not going to get a debate by themselves. They will get a debate and have a conservative moderator on stage with them. And therefore, it makes sure that, one, we get the eyeballs because that's where, people get their news, and that's where we can still, in this day and age, get as many people to watch it as possible, is to be on networks, and Fox obviously is doing the first one. But we also are making sure the conservatives participate in the questioning.
So a CBS or an NBC could get a debate, and sitting next to one of their anchors is someone like Dan Bongino or Mark Levin or something.
Yeah,
perhaps.
You're exactly right. And that's what we, that's what I see.
And I suspect some of the networks would object to that. Have they already said one way or the other, or do you know?
Well, that's called a negotiation. So that is what I'm currently doing.
Well, I would imagine. I can imagine that some of these dignified, respected news anchors would never deign to share a stage with a bloviating talk show host. I would gather, right?
And that's going to be and here's the thing. They can make that decision. That's fine. They just don't get a debate. But see, that's how it's going to work. They're either going to work with us, and I'm not ordering them to take a specific person. There's a negotiation. We can talk about different entities, different organizations, different moderator opportunities, and find somebody that's a good fit. That's fine. But the answer being no from them to that question of doing it in and of itself is not possible because if they say no, then they don't. Then they're eliminated entirely from being in a debate conversation.
Can you remind me, David Bossie, how many?
I'm not doing it.
Yeah, there are like 11, I think, candidates at present. How many of them they have to meet a certain threshold to appear on the stage? Yes.
Yeah, we have criteria. And actually Congressman Will Hurd just filed yesterday. So that's 13.
13.
13 candidates now. 13. and yeah. So it's fine. But we have criteria. You have to meet 1% in the polling this is for the first debate. You have to have 1% in the polling, and you have to have 40,000 unique donors. And that's
how many of that 13 have that right now?
On the polling threshold, not all of them. I'd say probably 8 or 9 have 1%, and then on the 40,000 unique donors that they need, I have no idea their internal numbers, but I'd say probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 have it. They're going to have to be able to. They're going to have to run a real campaign and show that they have the support of real Americans across the country.
Wow!
So it's not an easy task, but if you're running a real campaign, then you should be able to make these numbers, and they all agree with that. And that's why I've sat down and met with them all and talked about these issues, and some of them don't like it. As much as the other guys, but that's just that's the business that we're in.
I mean, this is not my observation. I'm just kind of curious because are you sort of seen as a Trump guy? I mean, now running the debates, do people like does Team DeSantis, are they mistrustful of your motives here as you coordinate these debates?
No. So that's a great question. Look, I have obviously. It's not a problem to have people think that.
I guess if Trump doesn't show up, it's moot, isn't it? It's a moot point.
Well, yeah, right. But it's also that I've known almost every one of these candidates personally and for many, many years. Some of them I've known longer than President Trump, and I've known him since 2010. Which is the same year I met Ron DeSantis. So, he and I have been friends for many years, and I've helped him and been a supporter of his when he ran for Congress and then ran for governor. So I help and support a lot of people. I happen to have been Donald Trump's deputy campaign manager when he won in 2016, and that's fantastic. But, he's going to be, and look, he's leading by a large margin, but that doesn't mean that my thumb's on the scale of anything. And it's hard to put your thumb on the scale of a debate when the rules are the rules, right? Like I'm using the same standards that we've used in the past, the same it's the same pledge, it's the same fundamental rules that were used in 15 and 16. So I'm not worried about that, and I let my work do the talking for it.
Well, I must say we swerved into a conversation I didn't intend to have today, but I thought it was valuable. I'm really grateful for your time. I welcome you back throughout. I mean, good grief, we're potentially staring down the barrel of 11 debates between now and February. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So as we get a little closer to the first one, let's see where we are, and I'll come back on and we'll kind of talk about it as we get closer.
Hey, I'd love to. And by the way, if you're looking for one of those conservative voices to throw in on a debate, one of the 11, I'm here. Give me a call. You know how to reach me.
I do. I appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.